and welcome to another episode of Dr. Mel's Message. I have an exceptional, when I say person with me, I guess I can't really call him an author. However, we are promoting a book. So how can you not be an author but promote a book? Well, here's the interesting thing. I happen to have with me today the godson of Avron Davidson. Does that ring a bell to you? It should. He's one of the greatest writers out there. And unfortunately, he has been deceased now for 30 years, I think. But we'll get into all of that because the book is now available, in which the family has put into a collection. And I happen to have, like I said, the godson, Seth Davis, on board with us today. Welcome, Seth. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much, Melissa.
Okay, I've got to know, number one, what's it like knowing somebody this famous as Avram Dickinson?
So, Avram, that's okay, Avram. So Avram was my godfather, and interestingly enough, because his family, it was like just another family member, and didn't really know how famous he was or what a rock star he was within the science fiction and fantasy community and mystery community as well. So really, I'd say it's really hit me later on. Ultimately, I inherited his estate for a variety of reasons, but it's hit me later on about what an exceptional author and writer he was. So, yeah.
Yeah, one thing I love about this book, and this particular book, I've been calling it the treasury because basically it is his collections, and what I actually is a treasure trove of his collections within it itself. And we have snippets and introductions by other famous sci-fi writers as well.
That's right.
How did that come about?
So my mom, there's a long history here, but my mom was married to Avram. Previously, they had a son together, and they separated very amicably. And my mom remarried, but they remained very close. And my mom collaborated with him over the years. And when he passed, his estate passed to my mom, and again, for a variety of reasons, he became my godfather. But she collaborated with a number of authors who really respected Avram to come up with this treasury that was originally printed by Tor. And it's fantastic. I mean, it has Ursula Le Guin, Robert Silverberg, Michael Swanwick, I mean, Gregory Benford, so many fantastic authors, Peter Beagle, just so many authors in there who talk about Avram, stories about Avram. And yeah, that's how it came about, a collaboration between my mom and Robert Silverberg and all the people who respected Avram. They put this together, and we decided, because Avram's 100th birthday is coming up in April, April 23rd, actually the same day as William Shakespeare, ironically, we decided to republish the treasury, as well as we've started to republish a number of Avram's book, as well as publish a number of his stories and books that were never previously published. So yeah, that's how it came about.
And the ones that haven't been published before, y'all found those like in the attic in a box or something?
Yeah, so basically when my mom passed away, the estate passed on to me, and I ended up, it was a mess. So I ended up taking everything, putting a lot of the information up in our attic, literally just boxes and boxes of material ended up in my attic. So no joke. And when I have a day job, which has nothing to do with publishing, which has nothing to do with writing. And really the only positive thing that came out of COVID was I actually started to work at home. And that gave me some time. There were some questions about the estate. And so I ended up going into the attic and seeing if I could answer those questions. And that's when I made these discoveries. Wait, why is Ray Bradbury writing the forwards to Avram's books? Why are Neil Gaiman and others raving about Avram? Why is Leonard Nimoy reading Avram stories to large audiences? What is all of this? What's a Hugo Award what's a Nebula Award, what's a World Fantasy Award, what's an Edgar Award, what does all this mean? So I started pulling all this information down, much to the annoyance of my wife, and started going through it, fell in love with his work. It was very sophisticated for a 12-year-old when I had initially started reading it. And so that's, I mean, that's basically how I made this discovery. That's, you know, the treasure, I guess you would say. And basically when I found all this out, I've sort of made it my mission, as I've talked to folks who truly say that he is one of the greatest short story writers of the 20th century. And they don't mean it in jest. I mean, they really mean at the level of a Dickens, Kafka. This great writer is slowly being forgotten. I'm making it my mission to make sure that he isn't forgotten. And so that's what we're doing.
Right. Well, what I love about this particular collection, like you said, all those intros by all these other famous sci-fi writers, etc. And then this is a book that you don't have to sit down and read from front to back in one setting. You can pick up a story and go. Pick up another story. You can read it in any order. You don't even have to go from the first one to the last one. You can choose whatever you want. And I love that. And I'm a sci-fi lover. My next book is almost finished. It's actually in the beta reading process, and it's a sci-fi space opera type of a thing. So you can imagine when you contacted me and was telling me about this particular collection, how excited I was.
Well, I will say the interesting thing about Avram is, yes, he wrote science fiction and he was the editor of SNSF for a few years, but his science fiction is very unique, and his work goes beyond science fiction into several different genres, from mystery to fantasy to just straight pure literature. I mean, stories published in the Kenyon Review. Right now I have a couple stories, we'll see what happens, that are in the hands of the New Yorker, that have nothing to do with fantasy or science fiction. So I think while his stories have there is some science fiction and speculative fiction elements in there, I think anyone would enjoy this collection, and it's a great place to start. And if you love it, fantastic. And if you find, you know what, it's not the right thing, then you don't need to go out and look at some of the other work. But it's a great place to start. If you're looking for a great author, I think it's a fantastic place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. The ones that you've included, which one's your favorite?
So I will say that for me personally, the Slovo Stove is probably one of his most under-recognized but powerful stories, having to do with what does it mean to be American? Mm-hmm. What does it mean to lose your ethnicity? It is an incredible story. I think one of the best stories ever written, not just by him, but by anyone at the same level of any author. So the Slovo Stove, I would say, is a must-read. And then from there, for me personally, I really like Now Let Us Sleep, which I think is Avram's. I think it's Avram telling the story of the Holocaust, but with a science fiction spin, in a way that at the time, he wrote earlier stories as a Jewish author that were probably too political and couldn't be told at the time. And so I think it was his way to share that. And it's a very powerful story. And then others really love Sources of the Nile. I really like the house that the Blakeneys built. I mean, those are some of my favorites. Or All the Seas with Oysters won a Hugo Award and is a classic. And then The Affair at Lahore Cantonment, I would describe as it's an Edgar Award winner, also an incredible story. And I will mention, we have, you know, one of the things we're really trying to do is not only push the estates in terms of literature, but also in the film world. And we have several stories in discussion right now with well-known producers and directors who have shown a very deep interest in some of these stories. So the hope is that some of these hit the screen, and hopefully that will help also with his legacy.
Wow, that's impressive. In your earlier communications to me, you talked about, about him, and I love the fact that you said, "Oh, he was a cranky old Jewish man." Why did you say that? I get it like you just said. I go, well, okay.
I'm not sure if I said that. I think maybe I said he was known for being a cranky.
Okay.
Yeah. So for me personally, actually, it's funny. That reputation was given a lot from he was sometimes his own worst enemy with publishers and agents. But from my own perspective, with kids, he was the most loving, doting, wonderful person. So I never saw that side. My mom certainly saw that side, but that's obviously they were married, so I can understand that. But I would say, yeah, sometimes he was cranky. He was opinionated, but he was also one of the most empathetic writers of his generation. So he had that reputation, but for those that knew him, they found and called him a friend. He was one of the most warm, loving, empathetic individuals out there.
Now the book, where is it available? Where can we buy it?
So right now it's on Amazon, and you can buy it both in paperback as well as ebook format. So that's the best. That's where to find it.
All right.
Oh, and it's also, I should say, for those that like audiobooks, it's also available on Audible. It's an
Oh,
incredible collection. And for those that like to listen, I've several of the stories available on the Avram Davidson Universe podcast, where we interview really interesting authors or individuals who are Davidson fans. And so a lot of those stories are also available at the Avram Davidson Universe podcast, which has continued to grow as well.
that's impressive. I want to talk a little bit about this cover for this. Obviously, that's Auburn, right? Do you know
Yes.
anything about that photograph, the history behind it?
It is the most, and I don't know if you have, if you've shared it, but it is the most unlike Avram image that I found, other than baby pictures of him. So
Okay.
Avram typically looked like either a rabbi or a sorcerer, or most of the photos are kind of this older looking, distinguished, or sometimes disheveled gentleman. And here's this photo of this young, dapper, sort of 50s Auburn Davidson. And I just thought that really captured maybe the Auburn that he wanted to be sometimes. And it really captured him. So I love that photo, and that's why I included it.
I was just curious. I loved it, but I said there's got to be a history behind this photo somehow.
Yeah. It's the photo that was most unlike any, the photo that captured him, but also was so unlike any other photo of him.
Amazing. Well, Seth, I want to first of all thank you for finding this in the attic, number one, and putting it together for everyone to be able to enjoy. And I don't want people to get bogged down when I tell them this book is well worth the money. It's 660 pages long. Okay, let me repeat. 660 pages long. So you're definitely getting the treasury from the one of the best writers that lived in the 20th century. So go out, get the book today, and leave them a review while you're at it. Thanks again, Seth, for coming on board. I'm Dr. Mel.
Thank you.